You're listening to the Gridiron and Wine podcast, where three girls, two Brits, one Yank, discuss the beautiful game of American football whilst drinking delicious wine. Enjoy the show. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Gridiron and Wine podcast. I'm Liz, aka NFLGirlUK, and with me are my co-hosts Dayna from Out Football and Shona from 99 Yards. In this episode we'll be discussing the latest in NFL news, the Chargers being linked to a move to London, the race for MVP, and as usual we'll end the show with our listener questions. But before we do that, we need to raise our glasses because this man is on fire right now. Many are calling him Mr. Perfect, which fair play. It's Ravens QB Lamar Jackson. Now, he registered his second perfect 158.3 quarterback rating this season, joining only Ben Roethlisberger among quarterbacks who've had two in 1 year. Jackson completed 15 of 17 passes for 223 yards and 3 touchdowns, whilst also rushing for 65 yards on 7 carries, and a Lamarian touchdown, before yielding to backup RG3 in the fourth quarter. So what a day. So cheers, Lamar. Forget the haters and keep doing you.
Cheers Lamar.
Cheers. So, week 10 of NFL is in the bag, and although we'll have recorded a show just a few hours before the 49ers take on the Seahawks, so let's see how that goes. But as a quick roundup for week 10, I can tell you that the New Orleans Saints didn't score a touchdown at home, Patrick Mahomes lost a shootout to Ryan Tannehill, and the Miami Dolphins have a winning streak. The usual winners seem to have swapped places with the continuous losers. The Patriots had a bye, but the other participants in last year's conference title games were Kansas City, Los Angeles, New Orleans. All of them lost. Now, of all of that, I think, if anything, we should probably talk about New Orleans Saints. Now, they have one of the best offensive lines in the league, yet this Sunday they were completely dominated by the Falcons, who sacked Drew Brees 7 times, which basically matches the amount of times that Saints have allowed that's happened during the Sean Payton Brees era. And this is now the third time this season that they've failed to score a touchdown. What do you think is getting in the way, and what is it they need to do to improve?
I don't know if it... Well, I guess it kind of was a shocking result in a way. But then, you know, Atlanta are actually a really good side, and I feel like they've just... not being able to pick up the results that they've kind of been looking for. Like, you know, when you watch a team and you're like, they're not playing bad, but they're just not winning. That's how I feel like with the Falcons. But the stat yesterday that really surprised me was that Drew Brees was sacked 6 times. And the Falcons had only a grand total of 7 sacks through 8 games beforehand. I don't really know what they need to do because the Saints are a really good team, and teams are going to lose along the way. But, you know, maybe they were playing a bit better under Teddy. I don't know. Maybe it's time Drew just kind of says bye. I'm going to lose some Saints fans here by saying that. I don't know. But it wasn't as surprising to me as I thought it would be because, like I say, I think the Falcons have just been quite unlucky with some of the results this year.
You know, I was shocked at this result. I looked up, as we're, you know, scrolling through the games, and I was like, I'm sorry. They must have There's no way that is what's happening right now. But I do think, Shona, that you're right. I think that the Falcons, while a team is what their record says, they're just having a hard time finishing games. They just can't seem to get through 4 quarters. They still play the games well. So I don't necessarily, while if the Falcons had picked up 1 or 2 of those games that they lost, I don't think we'd be as surprised. But this is a divisional game, you guys. Divisional teams, they play each other so hard. And so it makes you question whether or not the Saints overlooked the Falcons because of their record, or if it's just because it's like when Miami plays the Patriots, they can beat you know what I mean? Like, it just happens sometimes. But here's what I think that most people are looking at. I think that there is a shift in football, at least this year, to the more mobile quarterback, to the quarterbacks that can move in the pocket, that can escape the pressure. And so games are scheming more for that. And so the traditional pocket passers like Breeze, like Brady, who is also struggling this year, it's harder for them to play in these systems. I think that we are just seeing kind of a shift in the way the quarterback position is played. We just gave kudos to Lamar Jackson. Well, you know, he only threw for, I mean, I say only, but he only threw for 223 yards, where we were used to seeing over 300 yards from quarterbacks all the time. It's changing. And so I don't know if the Saints are just kind of readjusting back from a mobile quarterback to non-mobile quarterback, and so they were struggling with that, or what it was. But I think the Saints are going to be just fine. I think they are going to go deep into the playoffs. I think there's just an adjustment there from going from Teddy back to Drew Brees.
Instead of time for Tua, maybe it's time for Teddy.
Well, I've said that all season.
So with week 10 almost over, let's keep our fingers crossed for the Seahawks ladies. I think our cheers this week deserves to go to the Jets and the Falcons, who now join the Dolphins in doubling their season win totals. So well done, teams.
Well done.
Well done indeed.
Cheers.
So this segment actually came from a question that we had from one of our listeners. So last week there was a big rumor circling in the NFL that the league were anticipating sending the LA Chargers to play over in London, as it wasn't working out in LA. So basically make it their new home. However, their owner, Dean Spanos, dismissed the report, calling it bullshit. Fair enough, that they would share ground with Tottenham Hotspur. And then they shared that great video from the Wolf of Wall Street saying that they were not going anywhere on Twitter. Now, I personally don't think they should move to London, but I have said for a while that they made a mistake moving to LA. When the new ground opens, they're going to ground share with the Rams. So it will be the Rams' turf, in my opinion. And an example of this in another sport is in the NBA is how the Clippers share with the Lakers because they'll play at the Staples Center. But that's draped in Lakers' honors of them winning the playoffs, them winning the championship games. And as a fan, I wouldn't really care to see my team ground share if the other team had the honors constantly on display. Last year when the Chargers played the Titans in London, I actually spoke with 2 Chargers fans on the way who said they prefer going to away games for their team than go to LA, despite only living in San Diego. So they were saying they prefer traveling to San Francisco, they preferred going to Seattle. So is it a case of that they have lost their identity a bit? Because if you look at their home games, it's rarely filled with home fans, so it must be slightly disheartening. Should they put their hands up and say they got the move wrong, but instead of shipping them across the globe, figuring out logistics, why do they not just move them back to where many say they're still from?
This is a really complicated situation, excuse me, because it goes back so much further than just this more recent move. So I'm sure a lot of people know that, you know, LA used to have 2 teams before. They had the Raiders were in LA, and they had the Rams, of course, before the Rams moved to St. Louis and then turned around and moved back to LA. LA has tried 2 football teams before. It just doesn't seem to work for LA. And I don't understand. I get that there's a large population base there and they have a large NFL base, but LA, if you ask most fans, is a basketball town or hockey town, which is kind of odd, but it's very true. The LA Kings are very popular there. So I think that the NFL keeps trying to force football in LA, and it just doesn't work. I never understood why they moved 2 teams at once. Yeah. Why not just move the Rams back, leave San Diego in San Diego, because that's where they belonged. But to be honest with you, they weren't getting a huge turnout there either. I think what has happened is what you said, Shona. This team has completely lost its identity. No one knows who they are. And it's Phillip Rivers' team, but that doesn't mean anything. Plus, they haven't won anything, so there's no hype. There's no excitement. There's no bandwagon. to get underneath of them. So if you were looking at all the NFL teams, you want to find a team that's floating, so to speak, to move to London. That's why the Chargers actually make sense to move to London if we were going to move a team to London, because they're the ones that don't really seem to have a home. But it is not time to move a team to London yet. It just isn't. I know they've finished Tottenham Stadium, and I know they've done all those amazing things to make it NFL ready at all times, and I think that that's fantastic. But to have the Premier League schedule and the NFL schedule go along together at the same time is a very difficult task. Plus, you then have to make sure that the fan base is there. Now, the Jaguars have played in London forever. Okay, we get that. We understand, with Shad Khan owning the team and taking them over, they would be a more logical choice because it seems like they've already kind of built a fan base there. But they are pretty well entrenched in Jacksonville. And so I just don't think it's time yet. I know the NFL will be in London, but I think the 4 games they're playing over there is actually a really good start. And they should do that for a while before they try to uproot a team and take it to London. As for moving back to San Diego, they do not have a stadium to move back to. They do not have what they call an NFL qualifying stadium anymore. And so it'll be interesting to see how the Chargers do once they get into that big, new, beautiful stadium they're building in LA.
Yeah, so I kind of thought, when I saw, obviously, this all go down on Twitter the other week, I was like, of all the teams, I didn't personally see it being Chargers, and that is just because of this whole thing of Jacksonville being sold it for ages. Everyone's always said, they're the London team, it's going to be them. So, yeah, I was always like, that seems a bit odd, but I don't know, this whole discussion of a team in London, like, I found this year a struggle doing 4 games back-to-back, and I knew we had a week off in between, but that was so much and a massive commitment. I just don't think we are there to have a London team yet. I feel like it's going to happen, whether we like it or not. But yeah, we're definitely not ready yet. And yeah, whether it'll be Chargers, I don't see either, Dayna. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And can I say one more thing? It makes more sense if the NFL was truly trying to expand. And I get London and I get that they're trying to pull that European fan base in. But what is baffling to me, and you ladies can, agree or disagree, is why we're skipping Canada. Canada's right here.
Oh, totally. I agree with that.
It's just sitting there. Toronto, even Calgary, the CFL, I get they have their own league. But why not try and bump into one of those bigger cities, that already have the stadium, they already have all this, and try to expand that fan base north of us, where that flight wouldn't be quite so killer. I've never understood that. They just skip them.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I was actually speaking to somebody who lived in Toronto for years, and he's really into the NFL, and he was like, but my closest team was the Buffalo Bills when I'm living in Toronto. And I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah.
It could be that far. But you guys in Toronto, if you want to support an NFL team, you're supporting the Buffalo Bills. I don't know. It's just a bit strange.
And Canadians are all about CFL. Don't get me wrong. Like, they love that league. In CFL, if any of our UK listeners don't know, the Canadian Football League, they play by different rules. It is slightly different there, the way they play. They're actually a lot of fun to watch. But at the same time, it feels like, when you're talking about, the second tier of football, it just does. So expanding the NFL up north just makes so much more sense than that long flight over to London. But that's my soapbox. I don't know.
Because it is long, guys. I'm doing it tomorrow, and it's 9 hours.
How exciting.
Take a minute.
Could you imagine players doing that every week, though? No, that's crazy.
No, exactly, that's it. That's why it just wouldn't work. I think the only way they could do it is if they did, like, the set of games home and then another set away, rather than doing it, like, spread, because they'd have to do it all in one go, I think.
Right. So you'd have what? You'd have 8 home games and then 8 away games. That's not a fair advantage for anyone. So it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't.
Yeah, I think there's too many logistics for it to be possible yet.
Yeah.
Well, let's do a cheers to the Chargers social media person, because that tweet was amazing, and they are not going anywhere.
That was awesome. Cheers to them.
Cheers.
Cheers to them.
All right, ladies, so this week I want to talk about the MVP race. Now, in my opinion, it is way too early to start talking about the MVP race, but it seemed like this year they really started focusing on it even in preseason, like clear back in training camp. And that seems to have a much more tunnel focus on it this year than in past years. Now, I put that out on Twitter and people disagreed with me. They said, no, Dayna, it's like this every single year. But I just feel like this year, everyone is so focused on MVP, almost more so than like who's winning the divisions, which is baffling to me. But I decided to hop on the bandwagon, and I'm going to talk about the MVP race. Now, we all know that Russell Wilson, the Seahawks quarterback, has been getting a lot of focus this year. In my opinion, and it's 100% biased, he should have been being talked about this for years. But this is the year that they've decided to focus on him and all the amazing things he does. Well, that is because he is having such a big season. But there are other, and we'll talk about Russell again, but there are a few others that are popping into the conversation that I think absolutely deserve to be considered too. Of course, we're going to start first with Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar Jackson is the quarterback for the Ravens. We have already gushed about him a little bit in this podcast, but the kid has been fantastic. And he has done things for this Ravens team that has completely changed the way that John Harbaugh, the head coach, has been scheming around him. Now, are his numbers huge? Yes and no. He's playing beautifully, but it has more to do with, like I said earlier, he only threw for 223 yards. Well, that's only because we got so used to 300-yard games from quarterbacks for so long. But again, the position is changing, and so he is really standing out. And I have to say, that run yesterday where he spun out. Now, granted, it was the Bengals. They were playing the Bengals, but still, that run was so beautiful yesterday. And it shows that, you know, having the agility of the quarterback becomes so important. But another young quarterback that's getting a lot of attention is Houston Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson. Now, we don't hear his name quite as much, but you'd always hear it when they're talking about the top five people. You do hear Deshaun mentioned because he's completing 70% of his passes. He's averaging about 270 yards a game. He has 18 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Now, do those numbers stand out as much as, let's say, Russell Wilson, who has 22 touchdowns and 1 interception? No, but still, for being such a young quarterback on a team that sometimes struggles, he is being the MVP of that team, and it is amazing to watch. But then there are a couple. Now, I could bring up Aaron Rodgers because everyone's been talking about Aaron Rodgers too, but his last 2 games, terrible. So I think that he is playing his way right out that race, I will say.
And don't even get me started on that roughing the passer call yesterday against him.
Oh my God, I lost it on Twitter. And you know what the funny thing is you could tell by Aaron Rodgers' face, he knew that was a bad call. Do you know what I mean? Like he stood up and like shake his head. And so kudos to him for being somewhat honest, I guess. But so then there are a couple of other players that aren't quarterback because we all know that MVP is usually very quarterback heavy. That's who gets the MVP, right or wrong. That's who gets it. I mean, Adrian Peterson has won it in the past and that sort of thing. But usually non-quarterback players get Offensive Player of the Year instead of MVP.
Yeah.
But there are a couple that they have been talking about. Christian McCaffrey, the running back for the Panthers, is one of them.
He's amazing.
He has been playing fantastically. He's putting up great numbers, and he is, without question, the most important player on his team because of the whole quarterback debacle with Cam Newton going on IR. Kyle Allen playing well, but not playing at an MVP level in any way. And so Christian McCaffrey really has gotten that spotlight. Interestingly enough, though, Aaron Rodgers did bring up Aaron Jones, that his number, the running back for the Green Bay Packers, his numbers are up there with McCaffrey, and he has been playing fantastically, which is why Aaron Rodgers hasn't been playing as well because they've been running the ball so much because Aaron Jones has been playing so well. He has 14 touchdowns this season, and I don't know if that stat includes yesterday or not, but he had 14 touchdowns this season. He's been playing fantastically too. So, interestingly enough, the one who has dropped off is last year's MVP, Patrick Mahomes, and that, of course, is because he has had an injury. I thought with him coming back starting yesterday, which that game shocked the crap out of me, too.
Yes.
I couldn't believe it. But with him losing to the Tennessee Titans yesterday and having to have a quote-unquote shootout with Ryan Tannehill, like, where did that come from? That I think case is definitely kind of sliding a little bit, which is fine. He was brilliant last year and won it last year. But I have to say that in my opinion, and a lot of this, it changes week to week depending on how a team plays. So like after last night's amazing game, all anyone can do is talk about Lamar Jackson being MVP. Yeah. But if Russell Wilson plays well tonight, then it'll be all about Russell Wilson being MVP. We're not going to know who wins this till the end. But I want to know from you ladies who you think the MVP, try not to be biased, but who you think the MVP should be as of mid-season. Because like I said, we won't know till the end.
Okay, I do think Russell is up there. I 100% think he should have been in this conversation years ago. I still don't know why he wasn't, but he is now, so I'll appreciate it from that respect. But for me, I'm actually going to go with Lamar. I have been on the Lamar Jackson train since he was drafted last year when everyone was on the Baker Mayfield one. Sorry, Liz.
All right.
I thought when he came in last season, he completely changed like the Ravens' course, like to where they were heading. And he's just he's a humble and cool kid. Like he is one of the best I've seen. Like he literally was so humble even towards Tom Brady after he beat him. He was like, "Oh, you are the GOAT. You're the greatest of all time."
Mm-hmm.
Like that
He's
is
such
like
a good kid.
Like that is just you. That's what you want to see from your MVP as well. What he does on the pitch as well as what he does off. And I think he's been great. And like even the game against us against Seattle, he completely controlled it. And I was not. I was upset we lost, but we lost because they have Lamar Jackson as their quarterback. Mm-hmm. And he's dictating the game. He's, making sure that his offense is where he needs him to be. And if they're not, he does that incredible runs like he did yesterday. And he doesn't let the critics affect him at all as well, which I also think is brilliant. Like, they keep saying he should have been a running back, and he's doing videos on Twitter being like, "Oh, I'm a running back." He's just a cool kid. So for me, I'm going to say Lamar Jackson for MVP. Depending on obviously where they get, but I think they should make the playoffs from how their season has gone so far.
For me, I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey. Appreciate obviously he's a running back and is obviously more likely to get Offensive Player of the Year, but I think he deserves it. He's always putting up good numbers in a game. He averages more than 110 rushing yards per game and scoring 10 touchdowns. So, that is impressive. Like, how can you not give a guy like him MVP? So, Christian McCaffrey all the way. He is a shining star.
Yeah. Well, ladies, if I had to pick mine, it would be Russell Wilson, and it's not because I am a
We said not to be biased.
I know, but that's not it. It's pure numbers. He has 22 touchdowns, 1 interception. Do you know how hard that is? That's an insane.
That's insane.
Yeah, plus his quarterback rating of 118.2 is the highest in the NFL. Wow. Plus, if you look at Seattle's defense, which kills me to say, not good this year. So therefore, he's carrying this team completely on his back. Now, I think the Ravens defense is good. And so it's almost like a little bit of a switch where when Russell Wilson was a new quarterback in the league and everyone says, "Oh, they're winning because their defense is so good." You hear a little bit of that with Lamar Jackson, which I completely disagree with. But
yes,
that's why Russell is actually carrying this team. If we did not have Russell Wilson, they would have 2 wins.
We would be awful if we didn't have Russell Wilson this season.
Yeah. And so I think that's right now. Now, what happens in the next few games? I don't know. People have thrown around Jimmy Garoppolo's name, which made me laugh because we know that.
No, he's not the reason that they're winning.
Yeah, exactly.
But here is the funniest thing to me, ladies, and then we can move on. What name do we not hear this year? No one is talking about Tom Brady. And that is the first in a very long time that has happened.
His time's up.
So I want to say cheers, to be honest with you. I want to say cheers to all of them. If you are in the running of this, congratulations. You are having a fantastic season. So cheers, ladies.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, ladies, before we end the show, we've got some questions from our listeners. The first question is from Matt Cullen, who says, "I'd like to know which NFC team with current winning records you think will miss the playoffs." Well, Matt's a Jets fan, so obviously he doesn't want us to talk about the AFC. I'd say, so the strongest teams at the minute, I would say, and guys tell me if you think this is wrong, but I think the strongest teams at the minute are 49ers, Seahawks, Packers, Vikings and Saints. So of those teams, who do you think doesn't make the playoffs?
It's kind of a tough one right now because they're actually all playing really well. If I had to pick one, I would maybe say the Vikings, purely just because I don't think Kirk Cousins is that good of a quarterback. I mean, they are 7-3, and I guess like NFC games are going to be really important. Like they have the Seahawks near towards the end of the schedule. They only just edged out the Cowboys yesterday, 28-24. Yeah, I'll say them. At a push. I don't know. It's hard to pick.
To be quite honest with you, I think that all of those teams make the playoffs. I think that they have kind of set themselves up. The Vikings maybe, but I just don't. I think that we see all of those teams in the playoffs. I think the team that's on the bubble on whether or not we will is maybe the Cowboys. Because after last night, and now had we reversed that and the Cowboys won and the Vikings lost, I would say I'm real concerned about the Vikings. But the way they won last night, they fought till the end. So I don't think the Cowboys are going to be. I think they're the one on the bubble. I think that with everyone on this team either having on the list already having 7 or 8 wins, I think that that they're pretty well cemented. I mean, unless they have a disaster in the last half of the season, which. After yesterday, we don't know about the Saints, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But I think the really true bubble team as of right now is the Cowboys.
Yeah, that's a fair point, actually. Even Dak's dance didn't help them yesterday.
That video was awesome.
And our final question is from Claire the Bear. She asked, what team has been the biggest surprise with their standing so far this season? For me, from last year, I thought the Bears would be higher. On the other hand, I thought the Bills are doing better than I initially thought. So that's Claire's thoughts. If anything, for me, I thought that the 49ers were not going to be as successful as they have been. But obviously, like, you can't deny they've been really impressive. How about you guys?
I am shocked at what's going on with the Los Angeles Rams. I have no idea what has happened there. All of their talent is there and available, and I know they did some shaking up, before the trade deadline, but I think that this is the perfect example of what they call the Super Bowl hangover. This team came in and steamrolled everyone last year. They get most of their players back. They still have Aaron Donald, for God's sake. But then they played Goff. They paid him all that money, $110 million guaranteed. I'm just going to keep reminding everyone of that. But they just can't. There's just something. And I don't know if teams have, caught on to the scheme better. I don't know if McVay tried to shake things up and it didn't work. I don't know. But I am utterly surprised at what is going on with the Los Angeles Rams.
No, I completely agree. Before the season, I had them winning the NFC West, and I don't see them winning it now. Like, I think it's going to be between the Niners and the Seahawks. I actually had Niners third in the NFC. I thought they'd obviously done well in their draft picks, but I thought now it's like, obviously it's still need to gel, but obviously it's really worked for them, and kudos to them. But the Rams have just they're not falling apart, but it's not clicking. And I don't know if it's a mixture of the Super Bowl hangover plus giving Jared Goff that massive contract, which I still think is a bit dubious as to why they gave him it, but just my opinion. And yesterday, the Steelers managed to grind out the win. So I just really don't know what's going on over there.
I don't either. If I had to say on the AFC side, though, I'm with you, Liz. The Bills. They're so proud of the Bills. They're like your little brother you want to squeeze and say, good job. You know what I mean? Because I just feel like they're starting to get it together. So kudos, Bills fans. I love it.
that's all for this week's episode of Gridiron and Wine. Thank you to everyone for tuning into our podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and of course, tell a friend about the show. Until next time, thanks for listening.